director of Bebashi Transition to Hope, and I'm here with a conversation at Colors with Jewel, who is a prevention specialist at Bebashi Transition to Hope, with Jamila, also a prevention and navigation specialist at Bebashi, and my friend Naiymah, who works at ACLU. So let's start the conversation. So I wanted to open up the conversation with you all about what protection means to you.
It's a loaded question. Who wants to take that? I mean, I think protection, again, is very individual, depending on who you are, how you identify in your intersecting communities, what deems a person to feel protected or feel less safe is really up to that individual. We was talking a little bit earlier, and I would love to hear,
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I agree that it's a totally loaded question. I think while protection is very individual to the person, it's also like to tackle, the bigger conversation should be to tackle the concept of protection. Like, why do I even have to protect myself? And what am I protecting myself from? And that should be what's under the microscope that's being analyzed, and not so much how women and how black women in particular protect themselves and how that's perceived and how it comes across, when the bigger issue is, what are we protecting ourselves from? Are we protecting ourselves from the system? Are we protecting ourselves from men? Are we protecting ourselves from other black women? Because all of those isms exist in all of those settings.
I agree. I think Jamila raised an interesting point about what we actually need to protect ourselves from. And when I think protection, first I think like physical protection of like who we are, but also like emotional and mental protection from like outside forces. So it could be a lot of things. Like, we do have to protect ourselves from the people that, we should find community with, but also like based on where we are. Philly in general is just like, you never know what could happen. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into it.
So how do we start? Like, where do we start? Because once we understand what protection means to you, right? How do we say, this is how I need you to show up so that I feel safe with our men and with each other?
I definitely think that starts. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No? I think that starts literally in the nuclear family unit. It has to start there before it can go anywhere else. So we, as mothers, we have to be cognizant and aware of what we're teaching our sons and our daughters, and as sisters and brothers, we have to be aware of the standard that we uphold in our relationships with our siblings. And the same thing with the father of a family unit, like, or with the father figure, whoever it may be, parental, guardian, and just in general, caregiver. You have to be aware of the things that you are instilling, because the formative years of a person is like 0 to 10. After that, you pretty much are locked in of what you believe and what your moral system is. So we have to be aware of that, what we're teaching our kids before they get into the world, because that just spreads from there.
That foundation,
Yes.
making sure that foundation is sound. How your parents do instill their morals into you. But I fast forward that into the 13-year-old me, and finding protection for me was protecting my peace, like my identity, and finding where I was comfortable in the world. Because in my family, to be a trans woman was something that was new, right? Because they didn't have language for that. They didn't even know how to support a trans kid that was coming up in their house. So I was trying to figure out, how do I protect my peace? How do I protect my own space, my identity, as well as try to navigate in society that continue to put these barriers in front of me, so that I don't feel protected or feel less connected to everything that everyone else has.
So I'm glad you raised that point, because one of the things, I follow you on social media. I'm a fan. And one of the things you talk about is you are wanted, you are loved, you are affirmed, this is your space. Like, what's the feedback been with your social media platform about self-care, identification, self-love, freedom, expression. What's the feedback been like?
I mean, community members, they love it, right? Because we can never hear "I love you" enough, right? Because we don't hear "I love you" enough. I think that we have come to a point in society where showing our emotion verbally and physically to one another has become non-existent, right? So to hear that "I love you," and I don't even know you, but I love you. I love your existence, because if it wasn't for you and your existence today, there would be no one for tomorrow, right? Same thing for you, same thing for myself, is that the uplifting and the pouring into community members help people feel like they need to continue to thrive, right, or survive in a world, right, pushing through those barriers, right. Starting of your day is to affirm yourself and let you know that, listen, today may not be a good day, but I stand firm in who I am, right? And I still firm that I want to continue to support community members, whether they are on the binary scale of gender identities or not, right? It's about loving one another and pouring into each other, right? And which continues to uplift and provide this sound foundation in community, because not a lot of us have a foundation of family, right? So we go outside of our bio families to find that security.
Security and protection?
Security and protection. Yeah, that's safety, for sure.
So social media has a large part to do with who we are and how we ask for protection, how we expose ourselves. Because I can tell you, you can be victimized through social media,
Yes.
right? So what's your advice for younger folks around protection and the social media platform?
Honestly, I feel like being as though social media has just become a large part of just how we get our news, how we speak on social issues in general. I think it's powerful, but also like I think the younger generation might take it too seriously just because it's what they're being raised on. Especially like the family unit in general. Like I see it weakening, and like people are turning to their peers in social media for like the education piece, and you know like what they should hold themselves to, like a standard in a sense. I would say don't take it too seriously, because social media at the end of the day is a facade to a point. Yeah.
So what about females in particular, because that's what we're talking about? How do we influence and give them information about social media? I'm going to tell you, okay? I'm an employer. I every day people come for a job. One of the first things I do is Google them, right? And I say to young folks, be careful what you put on social media, because it's very easy to find the things that you've said, and once you put it out, it's hard to take it back, even though you think it disappears. But of course I'm old. So for you guys who are a little bit younger, just a little bit, what's some of the advice you give to young women about social media and how they portray themselves, but still be authentic?
I mean, I feel like
It's a layered question.
it is, because as women, as femme-body folks, we deal with a lot of stereotypes, right? Like body shaming, colorisms, like what's pretty, what's not, hair texture, hairstyles, the clothes and everything. And we use our social media now to really empower ourselves, like to embrace who we are, right? To bring in the joy of who we are, right? And that might be wearing clothes that are a little revealing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That is you being body positive and being secure with who you are. And I want folks to know that whatever shape, size, however you look, you are beautiful, right? And also at the same time being mindful of that, because the World Wide Web is open up to everyone, employers, trolls, right? And once you put content out, once somebody screenshot it, once someone shares it, you can take it down, but they still have a copy of that, right? And they still would use something small of you taking a joy in you having rolls. Like, I love my rolls. I do. I find it, being big is beautiful, right? I love it. I do love it. And there's also people who don't, right? And they say some harmful things to me. And to go back to why I do these affirmations, because people use words to harm, right? They use those words as bullets, right? And they shoot it through the screens from a keyboard. And we have to redefine and take back, reclaiming those words that have been used against us to keep us down, to empower us, to build us up. So how I do appreciate employers Googling. I do encourage employers to look at not just the content, but the message behind the content of like, this person is proud of who they are. This person is proud of their nappy hair, their roles, right? They are proud of their dysfunctional family. Reclaiming that, because no family is perfect. We say in jobs, treat your coworker like you treat your family, but honey, me and my sister don't get along. So if I treat my colleague how I treat my family, honey, you'll be all names, all types of worlds, right? Just saying. So I do think it's like a twofold, like you said, it's really can be ping pong with so many different ways, but reclaiming and using social media to uplift the joy in our community while empowering people to be proud of their flaws or whatever that has been used to keep them down for so long. Sorry for talking so much.
No, you're
Yeah.
good. You're good. That's a perspective that I didn't even consider to the length that you did, to the degree that you did. So I appreciate hearing that. I was thinking more along the lines of like the technology and the new ways we have of connecting with each other are really, really great, but they also can be really, really bad. And it's a very thin line between the two of them. And I think social media just in general has transformed our culture in a way that it has more permanence than I think it should be intended to. To the point where like we're talking about protecting Black women and the perception that you put out there on the internet, like that's what it is. It's just out there and anybody can see it anytime. So that's one way of thinking about it, like to protect yourself, but it's also like there are things that you're seeing on a daily basis, scrolling, that are infiltrating your mind, and you're not, it could be happening subconsciously, you're not even really paying attention to it. But like the things that we watch, the things that we read, the things we listen to, all of that we are subconsciously taking in. And nobody's going to post their terrible days on Instagram. They're only posting the good stuff. So now that breeds a space for comparison, and Jewel and I were just talking, like, comparison is the thief of joy. And that, like, is just becoming a monster. It's like snowballing, and then it pulls in those other layers of, now we're seeing, like, Black death on a regular basis on platforms. And also kind of like in a weird, nuanced way on the side, there's, like, people that are being immortalized on Instagram, because you can go, this Black boy was in the car and he got shot by an officer, and you can still go to his Instagram and his things are up, you know what I'm saying? And like people are commenting like RIP, and I think it just kind of really transformed the way that we socially connect in real life. And that is the thing that I think we should be thinking about protecting ourselves from. Like everything else falls under that umbrella.
Is it a social connect or a social disconnect? Because does social media actually connect us, or do it pull us farther apart? Because what you just shared, right, that comparison, we see that a lot in this work, social justice work, and just existing as Black women in society, is that we use social media to compare one another, compare our work, compare our lifestyles, compare whatever, right, against one another. So it really, social media has been, in a way, this platform that has been used to amplify the disconnect between communities and cause a disconnect between communities and community members.
I think that's what you gonna say. I think that's where guidance comes in, where like learning at home, like it's okay to like be confident in yourself, but also know that what you put out there is not going to disappear. Also know that this is not the end all be all, and just be careful. I have like a bunch of younger cousins that's like in the 13 to 16 range, and I monitor their social media, and I'm just like, what are you doing posting this? Like, grown people can like act as children and prey on what you posting, and like you posting locations and stuff like that. So I think in terms of protecting us, like I feel like we need to know more about like what goes into it, because like I feel like social media changes their terms so many, like a lot of times, and it's like privacy, location, we can now access your this, that, and the third, and it's just the fine print, and I think the youth isn't aware of like all of that. So it's just like, yeah, I think we gotta educate ourselves more and educate them, and it starts at home, because like their peers don't know. So it's like if we're not imparting their knowledge to them, then like who's gonna do it?
Right, for sure.
So I want to tell you this. There are good parts to social media, right? Because when we talk about protection, I didn't explain what comes immediately to me
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what protection looks like. For me, protection looks like rights, right? It looks like I have a voice. It looks like I'm being heard. And for me, social media is the place where I'm allowed to be heard. Many of the things that I felt about who I was as a black woman, just something in my generation, hair was a big thing. The fact that I can be an executive director and have locks is huge. And there are people who don't like that. I stopped dyeing my hair. I said, I'm going to be naturally gray. And I'm going to sit in front of folks and have them understand that I'm still beautiful. I'm still smart. I'm still relevant. I'm still, I have vitality. It's not tied to what I look like. It's tied to what I feel like and what I give every day. So in terms of protection, I want to be protected in being authentically me. I want to be protected in being authentically beautiful because this is how I was made. This is how my hair grew out of my head. This is how my body formulated after I ate the chicken nuggets, right? This is how I appear every day. And social media for me, because I'm not looking to be naked necessarily, but naked,
Yeah.
right? I want you to know this is the person that I am. I talk about who I am as a leader. I talk about who I am as a follower. I talk about my spirit. And so when I talk to younger folks, I'm not necessarily like, don't go to social media. But when you post, even when you post that bad day, look for positive things to come in. And when you find that there are negative things coming in, you need to block that. Everything is not for everybody. So protecting your peace and your space, which you talked about, also looks like protecting yourself on social media. You're not invited to know who I am and the intimate parts of who I am. There are pages for the public. So who I am as executive director is different than who I am breezy. The person that you all don't necessarily know, right? So I like that. I like that you all have a different perspective on what protection looks like because it's all valid.
For sure.
It all makes sense. I also like that we continue to talk about our youth. But I want to talk to you
Oh, Lord.
about
With the gray hair.
protecting particularly people of the trans experience. It is a different type of feeling. It's a different type of protection. And the peace is part of it, but there's a physical part of it that I'm painfully aware of. And as are you, what does that look like? How do we, who may not be a part of that community, help you with that protection?
So, particularly to talk about trans folks and thinking about the rights and protections of trans folks, it's nothing new of like the rights and protections of everyone, right? We're not asking for anything more than what our counterparts have, you know. I just want to touch on this, that when they designed the Constitution and Declaration of Independence and when they said we the people, they didn't think about we the people, black women, trans folks. They didn't think about the marginalized people in America, right? They thought about that 1%, the folks that were at that table that was creating those documents. So when I think about fighting for trans rights, I think about expanding the protections to make sure that reproductive justice and reproductive health care, abortion access does cover the purview of trans folks, non-binary individuals, and trans men, right? That when we talk about ending mass incarceration, that we're uplifting, right? We're talking about the real issues that Pennsylvania has a high rate of incarcerated folks, right? And that black and brown folks make up majority of folks who are incarcerated behind these walls, right? And majority of folks are in there for nonviolent offenses, right? And then we think about the disproportionate impact that has on black trans women, trans folks, right? Even in our local areas, like our local jails, right? They don't have an opportunity to pay for a lawyer to fight a case for something that they're engaging with to survive, like sex work, right? We're so stigmatized around the term sex that we have tabooed the interaction of work, sex work as real work, right? So when, and I don't mean to jump off the topic, but jumping through all of the hoops of protecting trans folks, it's no different than the voice, the words that I add to the movement for reproductive justice when we talk about women bodies. It's just expanding that language to make sure that we know that now all folks that birth babies identify as women, right? Or have breasts, right? And that what classifies a woman is not specific to birthing a baby or how a person looks, right? Taking us outside of those boxes. It's around this education piece to get us to a point where we will have rights, right? I say this a lot is that we can't really get to liberty until we get justice for all, right? And until we protect black folks, until we protect the marginalized folks in the black community, we're not going to get to that point of getting justice, right? So these conversations are essential to moving us in that direction. So when we talk about protecting trans people, especially trans females, I am thinking about the murder rate. I am thinking about the folks that's unhoused who don't have access to health care. Thinking about all of these things because it's important, but it's nothing different from the person I'm advocating that was born female, identify as female throughout their life. It's the same thing, right? The person that don't have a mother or a father to support them or a parent to support them or have a supportive network, right? I'm thinking about all of these things, their intersecting identities and what can I do and having the privilege that I have of being employed at this place of employment, or even having the privilege of having a voice and feeling comfortable, safe, protected, and using my voice, right? That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about what can I do to alleviate those problems in our community, right? By utilizing the privilege and my voice to make change.
I like what you said when you talked about sex work as being work.
It is work.
And
It is work.
no matter where you sit, no matter how you feel, it's work.
It is work.
Right? And we talk about protection. We talk about, rights. And one of the things we had at Bebashi, because of course I have to shout out Bebashi. Yep, that's what we do. But at Bebashi, we were going through this process of coming up with our core values, right? And I sent out a list to all the staff of like, what are our core values? I said, I have one core value that will be a core value because I say it's going to be a core value, but because it's essential to the protection of particularly women, but men too, right? And that protection said, we will provide radical customer service without judgment. So I don't care what you do to get the money that you get unless it harms somebody, right? If you're hurting somebody, then we have to do what we need to do because that we need to protect that
For sure.
person. But when it comes to you doing what you need to do to preserve yourself, there is no judgment. So I don't care if you gotta shake it on a pole to get the money that you gotta get, right? And you realize that shaking it on a pole is not gonna put food on my table. I want you to be able to come to a place where whatever you did to get through the month, you found you have more month than you have money. This is a place you can come and get some of the services that you need. That's what protection looks like,
For
right?
sure.
In every orifice. I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of judgment, and that doesn't feel like protection.
No, it doesn't. I mean, even in traditional nonprofit sectors, is that when folks hear of a community member coming in and needing services that engage in sex work, they're so hyper-focused on HIV and STIs, but they don't understand that there are other social needs or other needs that a person needs met, that HIV and STIs is far from the list, right? And also, if we don't meet those needs of that person, it could be the end result for them is that they become positive. Nothing wrong with it. We're not stigmatizing it, right? Liberation is important and claiming your status and loving all about you, right? Our job as prevention workers to prevent the harm in our community, right? So doing a lot of harm reduction, and that is instilling policies like that, where this is a no judgment zone, right? So that you can come in here and get resources, whether you're a sex worker or not, whether you're a female or not, whether you are trans or cisgender, right? Whether you're a Philadelphian or not, right? It's how are you showing up in this space and what resources I can give you that's going to reduce the harm that you're experiencing in your life. And I want to acknowledge this. The people that are imposing these new policies that are helping our community, that's reducing the harm, are black women. Let's say that again. It's black women that are seeing the needs and filling in the gaps and creating policies that creates a cycle that reduce the harm that our community members are experiencing. So, this roundtable is important, but you as a black woman is the ED of an organization. We have a black trans woman that runs the Office of LGBT Affairs. We have a black trans woman who created a resource facility for LGBT people, housing shelter. We have women in leadership roles today that 10 years ago, it wasn't even a thought about, right? 4 black women at a table with different skin tones wouldn't even have been a far-fetched, because colorism ran our community as well. And that's something we don't talk about enough.
I will say this generation got it right.
Oh, yes.
They got it right.
And I thank you. And I thank you.
And yes, I do.
I thank you.
I do. I was asked before, we sat at this table, like, who's your hero? Who are your sheroes? Like, who encourages you? And I was like, the young ladies I work with empower me. I mean, the things I wanted to do when I was younger, I just didn't. I was told I had to look a certain way, I had to act a certain way, I had to talk a certain way, and you guys got it right. Like, you love on each other in a different way than we did. Like, when I was growing up, oh, she thinks she cute. Now we're like, you look good, girl. It's a different mindset.
Yes.
When we see women in positions of power, it doesn't take anything from us. We're like, yeah, she did that. I remember watching Kamala Harris, and, as a Howard graduate, I was thinking, oh, my God, we made it to the White House. I don't know that 30, 40 years ago, people would have felt what they feel now about that. We look at womanhood and victory and triumph in a totally different way. We encourage each other. We tell each other, you look good. I love your hair. I love what you look like in your natural state. I think this generation did a better job at it, particularly around colorism.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think so too. I think while it is still an experience
For sure.
of women in general, not just dark-skinned women, specifically dark-skinned women, because the harm starts there. But colorism on all parts, because I don't think that people talk about the other experiences of it, like as being a lighter-skinned woman or a fair-skinned woman, like that, your experience of colorism as well. But I do agree with you that it's a lot less likely, because personally I don't feel like I've experienced like in my womanhood when I was younger, but there are women that I know that have experienced it, like gone on vacation and have been like targeted or like spoken to a certain type of way. So yeah, but I do think it's a lot less likely.
Yeah, I really want to take the opportunity to thank the younger generation. Don't you think?
Yes, I'm so comfortable knowing that the baton is being passed to a generation that has a sense of self-worth, but also a sense of community building, right? They gave us pennies, and they made us fight each other over those pennies so that we can reduce the harm in community. And now the new generation, the younger generation is saying, take y'all pennies back. We don't need it.
Right.
We can do this on our own, right? And I'm so grateful to the younger generation. And it leaves me with a person who is aging with that feeling of like, I'm going to be safe. We're talking about protection, right? What's going to happen to me when I'm a 70-year-old trans woman of color, aging, don't have family, because the buck stops with me. I don't have any kids, right? What happens to me?
Yeah.
You all happen to me.
Yeah.
You are preserving a spot for me for my future, right? Whereas though I don't have to fight. And I know my grandma, she's up above, is grateful to me for continuing the fight that her and my great grandmother was in, right? To move us forward, right? I don't know if we're going to get there today, tomorrow, right? The fight for liberty is a real fight, and it's a continuous fight, because as we see right now, they're continuously introducing legislation that will roll us back, rolling back Roe v. Wade, right? Even though that really only impacted white women, because, yeah, they get abortions a lot. I mean, I don't know, you don't want me to say this on here, but it's the reality of the fact. But reproductive justice is something that we need in communities of color and black communities, right? Having access to prenatal care and maternity doctors and things like that. But I do feel extremely comfortable and relieved that one day I'm going to take off my jacket and retire and ain't got to worry no more, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that the fight continues.
I think we should create a home for that, what you just said, and allow that to rest there, because the idea that you can age to be a 70-year-old trans woman of black experience, like that was once not a thing. The life
Listen,
expectancy
please,
of
thank
a
you.
trans person that was having that experience in their lifetime, they weren't living
No,
to that age.
no.
So, yes.
No, for sure. I mean, I said this earlier, I'm about to be 40. And folks that came in, transition with me, they're not here. You know, systemic oppression, community ignorance, trauma and harm has taken away my peers. And I'm here for the grace of the higher power. I'm still here. I'm fighting to survive by trying to fight for our rights, right? And it's exhausting. And I want to acknowledge that and revisiting to be grateful to you all, because acknowledging that it is exhausting aging while still fighting, right? My knees are cracking. My back hurt.
Mine too. Wait a minute.
That's the rain, honey. That's the rain.
So I wanna say, you know, we have some victories, right? We have a generation of folks that don't have the view or the prejudices that our generation had, right? And so you get to get that word, you get to get that voice, you get to get the platform to say the things that you need to say, along with some level of protection. And so, you know, for this next generation, we are grateful. We ask that you grow not weary in your well-doing, because it's starting to work. I think that this was a great conversation.
Me too.
One that could go on forever and ever and ever, but we will, at very minimal, protect each other in our womanhood and our femininity in the space that we take up. So thank you for this
Thank you.
community conversation
Yes,
with
thank you.
colors.
Yes.